Hey, welcome back, guys. This is going to be day number 4 of 100 Days of Nautobot, and we're actually going to be looking at day number 6 in the actual 100 Days to Nautobot repo, which is essentially objects as variables. So I've already gone ahead and created a all variables job example. I'll run first the job, and then I'll go through the actual code to kind of show what I did. So if I go here, we're going to see that it's got almost all the variables that I can pick. Some have default values, such as the string variable. It's got a hello world because it's a required field, so it's bold. I've got a date variable, which is essentially a string variable, but Nautobot has the functionality to add widgets, in this case, a date widget. So I have a default value of today, but you can change this to whatever date you want. Then I have a text variable, which is longer, multi-line text input. Then we've got an integer variable, which is integers. So you can go up in here or down in here, and it'll do the same thing. We got a Boolean variable, and then we got a dry run variable. And then I'll go over the differences between both of these. We got a choice variable as well. You can have just a single choice to pick from. We have a multi-choice variable, which is you can choose, all three or just whatever you want. Then we also have object variable, which you can actually use object from Nautobot. In this case, I've filtered down to device, so I see 2 devices here. Then I have multi-object, so similar as choice object, um, choice variable, and multi-choice variable. This is multi-object, so you can choose multiple objects within Nautobot. In this case, I narrowed it down to tags. So this is a tag name change scheduled, and this is a tag called end of life. So um, you could probably choose multiple tags, and when you run a job, and let's say you're creating a device, you can pre-select tags for the device. So when you create it, it gets them assigned. Then we have a file variable as well. In this case, I have just a device.txt with just 2 device names on them. And then we have IP address variable as well, IP address with mask variable, IP network. And then we also have a JSON variable where you can pass in JSON object with information such as custom fields, basically whatever you need to do. You can also pass a JSON variable, and then you can just handle that in the backend with Nautobot. All of these have already some type of built-in logic. So if I do like this IP, if I do not put a complete IP and I try to submit, it will error out because it already has form validation in the backend. Similar thing for IP with mask. If you don't put one, it'll ask you to put at least 24. And same thing for the network. If you don't put anything, it will tell you to do that for it. So most of these have some sort of form level validation to kind of help not mess things up. And then you can also add your own um, within the actual form that you create or within the actual Nautobot job, depending on what you're kind of doing. So if I just hit run for this particular job, all it's going to be doing is just job complete, true, message all variables, demonstrated successfully, variables process 15, and all I'm doing is just printing out the variables. So if I go into, these are my string variables here, that's my hello world, text variable, that's my text right there split by new lines. My numeric variables are here, integer variable 42, my boolean is true, my choice is blue, option 1, option 3 for the multi-choice, my object, I pick device 1, there's the object ID, object name, and then for multi-object, same thing, change scheduled, end of life, and you got the ID of the object. For file bar, I didn't, I printed this out wrong, so let me fix that real quick. IP address variable, there's IP mask, JSON variable, that's just a JSON variable printed out, but you can also print it out format it so that you can actually, easier for the human eye to read. But for the file variable, let me see why it did not print this device out. There we go. I guess I didn't actually hit the button. File variable, there's the actual file bar. That's the name. The content preview is just two device names right there. And deleted one file proxy. So that's essentially high level, all the stuff you can do in Nautobot within a job variable. And you will more than likely make this make more sense than what it is, which is just right now just inputting information. But the actual code of everything comes from the jobs um, repo. So you go into Nautobot, apps, jobs, and that's where all of these variables will be. And this is pretty much the library you're going to be using when you're creating Nautobot jobs. Any kind of custom solution you're going to be using, um, you'll probably end up using this a whole lot. But the job itself, of course, you have meta class. That's where you can define the name of the job, the description, if it has any sensitive variables, approvals, and whatnot. But for the actual variables, string var, here you go. You can set a description. You can set a default variable and the label. Description is going to be, what's down here. Label will be this particular thing here, string variable, and default will be what's inside, right? If I don't have a default, you wouldn't see anything, and then you would always require the user to enter something. In this case, you can define a default variable for it. So you can do this for certain things, such as tags or status can always be to new, depending on what your kind of business logic is, but you can define those here. And then you can also add other stuff here. So minimum, maximum length, also regex. If you're trying to enforce things, you can also do min max length and regex validation within the string variable. Um, for the calendar that I have, you can actually use a widget. In this case, I use date picker, and my default was just now.date. And this is from the Django details time zone. And that's where I was able to run this job, or at least start working with this job, and then it always picks today's date as the default variable. So if I go back to it, there's number 4, because that's what the date is for today. Text bar, similar thing. It just has multi-area, and it's multi-line text. So multiple lines just split up by new line each, and you can do this for like um, configurations. Maybe you just have a text file that you're reading off of, and you're just gonna put it in here. Um, it just depends on what you're doing. I rarely use this one, but it's an option for you if you know you're going to be putting in long strings of information. That way you can easily split it by new lines. Integer, same thing. You got integer input, default, like I said, 42, minimum 1, maximum 100, and then you got your label as well. Boolean var, it's just a true or false. In this case, I defaulted to true, and that's something you can do. Dry run variable, and we've got Boolean var. The difference really between these two is that the dry run variable bypasses approvals for the job if there is something that has an approval there. And that's only it only works if you have that. It used to be able to roll back changes, and I believe it still does, but I do not remember if it does or does not, because I do not see anything in the actual um, code that would suggest otherwise. But that is the difference between driver and Boolean. And I usually always use this because I rarely write jobs that require some approval process. Choice variable, similar thing. You just have a drop down to select single things. In this case, this is where I show the user on the right, and then the left is the actual value or variable that gets ingested by Nautobot. So I default to red, so I'll always get the red as the default option. Multi-choice, similar thing, except you can choose multiple options. Object variable, similar thing. But in this case, you can select a model. In this case, I chose a device model, and that's why I was only showing device objects within that. You can also use a query set or query params to further filter what you want to show. And this all goes back to Django filters API. So if your model supports query parameters, you can do that so that you can only show, like, let's say devices that are in active status, or don't show devices that are in decommission status, right? Because if you work in a big organization, you can have thousands and thousands of devices, and you don't want the user to select something that um, is decommissioned. And it's very hard to see or know if you just go through this list, because all you see is device one and device two. But if you only select, um, only show things that are active, or don't show me things that are decommissioned, it filters down stuff. And you can even take this a step further, which a lot of the times I do is I can further go down the object. So let's say a person is working through a device, but they want to be able to filter by location and device type and then device. You can have three different object variables, and you can have location first, then device type, and then device. And as a user picks, Dallas location, it filters down the devices that are only in Dallas. And as you pick a device type, let's say it's some Cisco ASR, it further filters out the device even further to only devices from Dallas for that device type. And then you can also put that they're not decommissioned. So instead of having a list of 200 devices, it could be like 10, and it makes life easier for the user. Even though you can still come in here and type exactly what you're looking for, to kind of filter out to only the option that you want. But that is something that you can do as well. Multi-object, same thing. You can just select multiple objects. In this case, I'm using tag for this. File variable, same thing. You just enter a file variable. You can have description, required widgets, etc. And this is cool to process like CSV files or text files, information. IP address variable, IP addresses mask, IP network, all of those have built-in validation to just help you get this information easier, instead of you having to write regex or stuff like that to kind of prevent the user from entering wrong information. You can work with this, and then you can just have some sort of validation within the job that before you even process anything, you check that this IP is available, before you continue doing work within the backend or changing or trying to assign this network, right? Like, first check if it's available. If it is, continue. If not, raise an exception, tell a user, hey, this IP is not available, but this one is, and then they can rerun it with the new information that you provide. JSON, same thing. JSON variable, it's native serialized JSON data. So you just pass information and it's serialized JSON data. Nothing fancy there. Other than that, I'm just literally printing out information. For the run, you can either pass each one of these variables individually through here, or you can use something like keywords, and then you can just do keywords get, and then you get the variable, and then that's how you can actually tap into that particular information. Most of the time, depending on what I'm doing, I will always do some type of self and do like self.device object, and then I'll put keywords object var, and I wouldn't call it object var, I'd probably call it like device var, so I know what it is. But if I name it device object, I know that it's a device, right? The bad thing is here is I would have to do something like this. That way it does the attribute for me, because here it won't, right? It'll give me this Pylance type of error. If I go here, it'll tell me it's a device object. But if I were to do, if I go here and I do device object, equals, no, object var device, and I do device var, oh my god, object var. I don't get the error because I'm just assigning it directly, and I get the device. So either way works, and it just depends on if you have, stuff like pylons or anything that's gonna kind of yell at you or whatnot. Um, if it's not a lot of variables that the user's putting, you can just type each one of them. I've done this for like 5 or 6 of them. If it's a lot, like I have currently for this particular job, um, I just kind of keep it like this. It's quite a bit of variables just to type it in, but up to you, up to the preference that you're doing. It just kind of helps out with the actual knowing what the type of variables are. But other than that, that is pretty much a quick demo of what you can do in Nautobot. I'm going to do a quick jump and create one with the query params kind of filtered down so you can kind of get a quick view as to how that works. All right, so the filtered object selection job is complete. And the job itself is super simple. I'll just go through it. Device one, and I'll choose a tag. All this job is doing is just adding some tags to a device. And in this case, device one will have a tag. And if I rerun this and I just hit the delete tags, I made it so that if this is always true, it always removes the tags. It finishes, go back to device, and it no longer has tags. Thing to remember is to do remove and not do delete, because if you delete the tag, it will delete the tag entirely. If you do remove, then it just removes it from the actual object that it was attached to, or I guess associated with. So if we go back to this and I just remove these things, we're talking about filtering down information. Uh, you can search here, obviously, you can put device 02, right? And you can search for the device that you want. Sometimes in big organizations, you know the devices, but you don't know the status, right? Like nothing here tells me what the status is for these devices. You can do something that filters down by a default value, like never show me things that are decommissioned. But what you can do is you can filter down selections. So if I go here and I say, get me everything that is in inventory status. This will show no results because there's nothing in inventory. If I hit active, then you're going to see one device here, device 02. And that is because if I go to devices, you're going to see that I only have one device with active status, right? Nothing else is active within my environment. One's offline, and two are being decommissioned. So you can, in theory, depending on what your business logic is, have a filter that you don't even have to ask them for their status, right? This can just be a default filter within the device, and you will only see devices that are in active status. But you can also have them pick something, right? Let's say they're doing something and they're trying to pick something that's offline for some reason. Then you'll see a device there offline. You can have something that says troubled, or status new, and you know that you have to do something with those new status devices. Furthermore, you can go a step further. So in location, you can see that there's a hierarchy: North America, states, data center. You can have 3 different options where you can choose the region, and then you pick North America, and then the second one would be state, and you would only see states within North America. And then if you hit Texas, then you would go either another form down and you see only data centers from Texas. In this case, I didn't do that just to make this simple. I'll just pick DFW. So if I pick DFW, if you go to devices, we only have 3 devices in DFW. So I should only see 3 devices. Same thing if I go to Austin, I should only see 1 device. If I go to a manufacturer and I pick something like Arista, I should only see device types from Arista. Same thing for Cisco, only device types from Cisco. For these, I have one for for this ASA 5500. So if I pick 5500, I should only see, oh, no device because there's none in Austin. If I go to device, you'll see one. So Having this hierarchy helps the user interface easier and more simpler to use. And it makes life easier for you as the software developer because you can kind of keep the user in some type of guardrails so that they don't pick things that don't make sense, but also allows you to do valuable information as well. So in this case, let's say there's this tag end of life, and let's say for some reason uh, they selected active, right? If it's end of life, and let's say you have some business logic that says, hey, if you're adding this tag here, you have to actually put it to offline or planned or decommissioning, something, right? Even if they select end of life, you can have something within the job that says, hey, I've gone ahead and added this particular tag, and I see that it's end of life. I'm going to change the status to decommissioning, even if the user put active. I'm going to change it to decommission because I have a rule within my job that says if this tag is selected and this status, change it to this, right? So that you can control the flow of actions. You can also have something within the device form if you override it where it says if you select status decommissioned, add a particular tag, or vice versa. If you add a tag to it, change the status based on this tag. You can have different object change kind of webhooks that kind of do those type of things, but that's getting ahead of this job itself. So now let's kind of just go look at the code real quick. So filter job, I won't go over any of the meta class. It's pretty explanatory, but the kind of crux of how this works is the top layer hierarchy stuff is just object variables, right? Manufacturer, location. But what we really end up doing is we end up using these query bars. Um, and these query bars, what you end up doing is you end up using filters, right? They work with the API filtering. So anything you can do with the filter set API that you create, if it's Autobot, they're pretty good. If it's custom that you're creating, that's why it's very important for you to create good filters and good meaningful filters because then you can make your jobs even better. So in this case, if I go into the device type, you would be able to query down a filter by manufacturer, and then you just follow the convention of $ manufacturer so that whatever you pick here further filters down this selection. Same thing for the status. I'm only showing statuses that are content type relevant to the device because I'm only choosing a device object. If I was messing around with multiple statuses, um, I would probably add more than this, or I would just ask for what active. There's certain ones that are shared across the board, like active is kind of in device, circuits, and rack. But this is a way to just filter for just stuff that's device related. And then here's where I use name, um, not include decommissioning, right? So I'm excluding decommissioning from the status object bar. And then for the device, I add all three: the location, device type, status. And I can add even more if I have stuff here to further filter down this form. Tags are, there's nothing special here. And the whole logic that happens is if delete tags boolean is true, um, get the device, which I've passed through the run method here, get the device, the tags, and just clear them. And then I just print it out. I save the device, and vice versa. If this is not true, then yeah, obviously I want to get the tags. So add tags, logger, validate, save, and the job is complete. So that's just a quick little demo on kind of how to filter down information. It does help out in the UI, and yeah, I hope you liked it.